This is a rather important car, and one with a place in rally sport history. But at face value, it's just a 1998 Mitsubishi Evo V GSR. However, the Evo wasn't offered in the US until 2003 for its 8th generation. So how is this here? The answer to that question comes in the form of a brief history lesson. Let's wind the clocks back to 1980, where you'll meet a chap named Douglas DeBoard. Now, Douglas was a rather observant fellow. He noticed that Mercedes-Benz was selling different versions of their cars in the US market compared to the European market, where the European variants were more powerful and had more features. Now, you take that fact and you couple it with the fact that the US currency was appreciating relative to other worldly currencies. And what you get is an opportunity. You see, he figured that he could go to the European markets, buy up all their cars, import them into the US, and sell them on the gray market, undercutting the prices of the US versions of those cars, which again, were not as powerful and didn't have as many features. Now, it obviously must have worked because he got the attention of the manufacturers. In 1980, 1,500 cars a year, on average, were being imported into the US. But thanks to Douglas and others that copied that idea, by 1985, that number, 1,500 cars, grew to 67,000 cars per year. And this really aggravated brands, especially Mercedes-Benz. And you can understand why, because at its peak, 20% of Mercedes-Benz sold in the US were off the gray market. And this costed the brand an estimated $300 million. So obviously, Mercedes had to respond. And they did so in the form of a law. See, they banded together with other manufacturers and brought about the Imported Vehicle Safety Compliance Act of 1988. What this act did was make it damn near impossible to import not only a Mercedes-Benz, but any car. So by 1995, that annual import figure dropped from 67,000 cars per year to right around 300. And the justification was simple, that imported cars would not meet the safety and emissions requirements, obviously. However, in 1998, there was an amendment, the 25-year rule, which, as the name suggests, stipulated that after just 25 years, you could import whatever you want, because at that point it would be considered collectible, or a classic, and therefore safe, I guess? And that ruling has stayed largely the same ever since. Which brings us back to this car, which has just recently turned of age. In order to get the car that you like, especially those that didn't ever come to the US market to begin with, you're gonna have to let somebody else beat it up for about a quarter of a century. Then you're gonna have to pay obscene amounts of money to trust someone to ship it thousands of miles over the ocean and hope that it gets here in the same piece. And let's not begin to talk about the US customs and how they like to tear things up with no remorse. In any event, let's go through this car. Exterior-wise, it doesn't actually look that bad, but when you do get up close, there are some problem issues. Paint's actually not that bad, especially when you consider that it came from Lithuania, a place famous for its severe winter weather. I think with a bit of buff and polish, it'll look quite good. I haven't had the car washed at all or touched because I wanted it to be in the condition that it arrived in for this video. Wheels are in pretty rough shape. They're gonna need to be refinished. Brakes are gonna need to be replaced as well, as is the suspension, which is non-original, and the bushings. These tires are from a brand that I've never heard of. Seals around the fender flares, those are starting to yellow, which is, I guess, not the biggest problem, but they are cracking, so those will have to be replaced as well. This little intake port is covered in carbon fiber, except that it isn't because it's a sticker. The louver underneath these nostrils, that has a hole in it from God knows what. Aesthetically, the car actually doesn't look that bad, all things considered. But let's take a look underneath. There we go. All right. In terms of the engine bay, there are some things that need to be addressed. First and foremost, the battery is held together with a zip tie. It looks like this air box is also held together with a zip tie. I love zip ties, but I'd prefer that they were held together by more than just that. Many of the hoses and clamps and such seem to be in pretty rough shape. Some of the metal components have not yet rusted. Engine cover, the red paint is chipping away quite badly. AC compressor, I would assume is fine. AC condenser, I'm not really sure the condition of it because it's not here, but the car turns on and it runs pretty good. It sounds pretty cool. Let's talk about the interior. And there isn't a whole lot to talk about because there wasn't a whole lot that came on this car to begin with, but that might be a good thing, less things to be broken. Now, straight away, you'll notice that this is a left-hand drive car, which it originally was not. It was a right-hand drive car that was converted to left-hand drive. So that's probably going to add some complexity. But let's go through the interior. There's 2 buttons for the horn, neither of which work, which is fine, I suppose. There's quite a lot of wear and tear, but not as bad as I would have expected for a car of this age coming from across the world. The seats are Recaros, and they actually have worn quite well. I was expecting them to be ripped and destroyed, but they're not that bad. There's this little carbon fiber sticker there again, which is kind of annoying. The button here for the fog lights doesn't work. Not a surprise, the car doesn't have fog lights. The AC doesn't work. The radio, no other word for it, gone. This little thing, it's broken. Cigarette lighter doesn't work. There are some buttons down here which do something, but whatever it is that they do, they don't work. The window controls do work. They're actually automatic windows, except that the controls for the passenger window move the driver window, and the controls for the driver window move the passenger window, but only on the front. The rear windows work as they're intended. There's some similar backwards logic in terms of the rear view mirrors because the left controls move the right mirror and the right controls move the left mirror. So that's interesting. It does have a sunroof or moonroof, but it doesn't work either. All of the gauges work, and by all of them I mean the 4. There are quite a lot of squeaks and rattles throughout the cabin, is to be expected. The carpets don't fit quite that nice, and the carpets on the driver's side and the passenger side don't match. And these door locks only work manually, so they can't be locked with any kind of electronic components. The trunk doesn't work, except for with the controls here. The key won't open it. But the clock is fully functional. This car feels old school, and I mean that in a good way, because I grew up in the community of import sports cars. So what was that like? It was cars that creaked, cars that rattled, bounced about quite a bit, were heavily modified, and made some pretty good noises. This does all of those things, especially the squeaking part. Now, this car has a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 engine, and when it was released new in 1998, it produced 276 brake horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque. Now that, coupled with the all-wheel drive and 5-speed manual transmission, meant that it would do 0 to 60 in just 5.1 seconds. Now that was fast for a car back then. That's still fast for a car today. In fact, it's faster than a modern-day Subaru WRX, which is pretty impressive. This is a quick car. But unlike the modern-day WRX, or any other modern car for that matter, this still has those 90s car sounds, and I mean specifically the sounds that come off of the turbocharger. Now, back in those days, turbocharging a car wasn't really done for the sake of efficiency, miles per gallon, what have you. It was done for power and for cool noises. So you get a very dominant sucking sound as you're on throttle, and as soon as you release throttle, you get the most satisfying blow-off valve sound in the car industry. This car does that extremely well. In terms of driving dynamics, God, listen to all of those squeaks. In terms of driving dynamics, the accelerator pedal has a bit of travel where it does nothing, and then you get quite a bit of turbo lag, then you feel it start to build, and when you release, you get that blow-off valve, which is great. The brake pedal is a bit more of an issue because the travel on the accelerator pedal is forgivable. The gap on the brake pedal between you pressing it and it doing something is slightly more of a concern. It really doesn't do much of anything until you're in trouble, and then you panic, you push it, and then you have some braking power, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. The clutch is also not in the best of conditions. In fact, the engagement point is so far up, I almost feel like I don't have to touch the clutch at all to be able to change gear. Ride is quite a bit bumpier than I would like, but overall, I'm willing to forgive a lot of that because of that turbo. It sounds really good. Everything else can be addressed. I think it's pretty clear that this car is in rough shape. The ride is less than ideal, the body is sprinkled with rust spots, and the brakes are actively trying to kill you. And while it is going to require a lot to make it perfect, I don't think it's really going to need all that much to make it good. But either way, it does beg the question, why do anything at all? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I think this is the best looking car that Mitsubishi ever made. And the Mitsubishi of today is not a good representation of the brand. They used to make one of the greatest rally cars in history. When this car was released in 1998, it was Mitsubishi's most successful year in rally sport. They actually won the WRC Manufacturer Championship, something that they had been working towards for 6 years at the time. The car that replaced it was great, and so on and so on. Every Evo has been amazing, but Mitsubishi is a shadow of its former self right now, at least in my opinion. And all of that makes this car that much more important in automotive history and to the history of this channel, because what I'm standing beside right now, hoping, will be the first project car on the channel, which is pretty exciting for me, and I hope that it's exciting for you guys as well as we start to make more videos following this build. So be sure to look out for those in the future. The car is in rough shape, I get that, but I think it's worth saving. But that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me your thoughts in the comment section below, and definitely stay tuned for updates on this car, what we're going to be doing to it, how it's going to be changing. I think it's really exciting. I hope that you guys are equally as excited for it. But until the next video, thanks again and take care.